Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on the time you are accessing this video. Welcome to Java programming. Today, we are going to consider graphical user interface. If you are accessing this video on YouTube, this is a course taught on coolchat.com. So you can visit coolchat.com to see the code in the form of a test so that you can sometimes easily copy and paste and analyze the code and make some modifications instead of typing from scratch. Okay, so on kucha.com there are lists of courses, but we are going to consider Java programming. So you click on that course. Now, a course you are searching for is not in the list of popular courses. When you go to the menu under courses, if it's a programming course, it will be under information. Okay, so that's Java programming, and we are going to consider the graphical user interface with content. So that will be, I think, week 8 or week 7. Let me check which of the weeks. Okay, so that's week 8. So week 8 is advanced graphical user interface. So we go to week 8. Okay, so I'm going to zoom it so that you can see it there. Okay. Okay. So in the previous weeks, the applications we've been writing are console application, where we ask the user to enter something, then the user enters it in the console. But in actual software, there is a graphical user interface where there will be a field where the user will enter, type something, then the user may click on a button to do something. Okay, so that's what this week content is about. We are going to design a graphical user interface with buttons where people can click. Then we implement the action listeners for the button so that when the person click, we process the information, then we display an output to the user on the same graphical user interface. Okay, so GUI basically is graphical user interface. That's the abbreviation for the GUI. And it is very important to follow each of the steps I'm going to give you. I don't get, but few of my class, the students, they are having issues with graphical user interface. But this is simple. If you are a programmer and you follow steps, you're obedient and you follow steps, you won't have any difficulty, because even this content I've given it step by step. So you just need to buy a time. If you are a student, your responsibility is to learn. That's why you call yourself a student. Or if you are not a student but you want to acquire the skills on your own, you need to invest something, which is the time. So you just need to, you don't have to rush through the content. It's not a reading course where you take the book, what is this? Then you just say it over, recite it over and over again, then you stick. No, it doesn't work that way. This is a professional skill acquisition where you need to practice. So you do more, you get a knowledge, you get error, you correct it. That's how we learn in programming. So if you just want to get it easy, it doesn't work anywhere that way. You need to work, you need to invest time and work before you acquire whatever you want to acquire. Okay, so I'm going to follow this step by step. Then as and it has been noted here, I will do it. Then you can see in terms of the using the Eclipse. I'm going to use Eclipse as we've been using. Okay, so the graphical user interface needs a package. It needs a class which has already been written by Java. So before you design any graphical user interface, you need to import that package. all those things which has been written, which you need to import them before you can use the graphical user interface. So the first step is to import that package. And what is the package? It is called javas.string .star. The .star will import everything, all the things you need for the graphical user interface in the Java's package. It's going to import everything into your project. So that's the first thing you need to do. Import javas.string. Okay. And if you are, this is week 8. If you are accessing week 8 in up now, you are not able to create a project in Eclipse, then I don't know. You have to go back to week 1, week 2, and the rest, and follow step by step before you get here. Because if you are on this stage, I believe you've considered the other weeks content as well. So when you create your project, then you create your class. Then in the class, you import your javas.swing. By now, you should be able to know how to create a class. So once you've created your class for the graphical user interface, the GUI, you give the class a name. So the class name for the GUI, then you import your javas.swing. We've seen the number of imports, so import shouldn't be something new to you. When we're using the scanner class, we were importing that package as well. So importing shouldn't be anything new to you. So first, import javas.swing. Now once you've imported javas.swing, you need to extend JFrame. So this is your class name. So once you create a class, all this will be there already. Okay. So all this will be there already based on the name you're giving to your class. So the new code you need to write is extends JFrame. So the extends JFrame is going to make it so that you know that. So the extends JFrame will inherit all the packages, all the properties and the classes and the methods we have in this javas.swing. Okay. So first, once you've done this, the next stage is extends JFrame. So you write it after your class, extends JFrame. Okay. So once you've written it, then we follow. So step 1, import javas.swing. Step 2, extends JFrame. Then we continue. So like I've explained, the components you have in the for the GUIs and the buttons, everything you have, they are all in the javas.swing. Okay. And in the buttons, there will be click, the buttons. And also if you have a drop down list, there will also be click. Okay. Now this video is going to be part 1 because a graphical user interface is very much. So I've divided it into sections. So part 1 will deal with the graphical user interface design with the text field, the buttons, and the rest. Then the part 2 is going to be the drop down list, the menus, and the rest. Okay. So basically that's what this week content is going to contain. But this video is meant for part 1. So I'll do the content for part 2 as well. Then I'll create a different video also for the part 2 where we have the using of drop down list and also a menu where you have a menu where people can select an option to open maybe a new window or to do something. Okay, so that one is going to be in the part 2 video of the graphical user interface design. This is basically part 1 where we are going to design simple graphical user interface and we add the action listener to the buttons or a person to click and something happens. Okay, now for handling the action listeners, handling an action listener is when someone clicks on the button, what should happen? That's what we call the action listeners. Okay, so you need to implement the action listeners. So after the JFrame, remember there should be space here. After the JFrame, you have implement action listener over here. So after the JFrame space, then implement action listener, comma, item listener, comma, then window listener. Okay. So the item listener normally is for the drop down so that when an item has been selected, it will listen to it. If you want to implement something when an item has been selected, then you use the item listener. Now when the button is clicked, you use the action listener. Now when the window is closed or it's reduced or whatever happens to the window, you use the window listener. Okay, so that's basically it. So after assign JFrame, the next code you leave a space, then implement action listener, item listener, command, then they are all command, then window listener. Now once you've done this, you get an error. You will get an error in your code. So now you need to correct those errors. So there will be an error icon somewhere here. So you get for example, you get an error icon somewhere here. So like I explained here, when you click on it, it will give you an option. It will give you an option where we have add unimplemented method. You can click on it. Then it will import a method. It will import a method for you. Another option is import a package. So if you click on and it refuses to import and it gives a package, then you just click on it. Then the next step is add on implemented method. So you do that for the action listener, you do that for the item listener, then you do that for the window listener. Once you are done with that, the error vanishes. Okay, then it means you're on the right path. Okay, so now we are going to have an example. So I'm going to call my class window. Okay, so I'm going to create a new project, so new Java project. Okay, so let's assume I'm going to design an application where students can use it to calculate the potential of a body. So the potential energy of the body takes the mass, then the acceleration due to gravity, and the height of the body. Okay, so potential energy is mgh. So you design an input where the user will enter the mass, the user will enter the acceleration due to gravity, and the user will enter the height. Then we click on the button calculate, then it will calculate. Then we have a clear button where when the user click, it will clear the field. Okay, so I'm going to call this potential energy calculator. So calculator. Okay, so then finish. So those of you who don't know how to create a project, so I believe you are following me. Now don't add a model. If you add a model and you are running your data, you'll be getting errors. So don't create any model. Just click on don't create. Don't create any model. Okay. So now once you created your project in the SRC, you can add your classes in the SRC. So in our class, we are going to add our class. I'm going to call it window. I can call it GUI or window, however you want it. So I add my class. So remember, classes are normally, even though you can enter small letter, they are supposed to be in a capital letter. So I'm going to call it window. Okay. Now, if you write your public static void main in the window graphical user interface itself, then you can include the public static void main. But if you want to create a different class to create objects of your graphical user interface and to show the window, then you don't need to include the public static void main. Okay. So in this example, I'm going to include the public static void main. So I include the public static void main. Okay. Okay, so here we have our public class window. Okay, so like it was said, step 1 is to import your javas dot string dot star. So on top of your class, you write import javas dot javas dot string, okay, dot star. So the dot star will import everything. Okay, so that's step 1. Import javas dot string dot star. So once you are done that, then you have to extend your JFrame. So extends JFrame. Okay. So remember the J and F are in capital letters. So extend JFrame. So now, because we'll be having action listeners, you can write implement. So implement. Okay. So we have an action listener. Then we have what? Item listener. Then we have window listener. Okay. So you have action listener, window, item listener, action listener, comma, window listener, item listener. So implement action listener, item listener, then window listener. So this makes it possible for a button to be clicked. Then you write this, make it possible for when an item is selected to write what will happen. And this makes it possible when a window is closed, you add what should happen to it. Okay, so now you can see that anytime I hover it, it's even giving me suggestions on how to correct my error. Okay, so if you hover any of the errors, it gives you. So for example, when I put my cursor on the action listener, you can see that it says import action listener. Okay, so you can click on that, or another alternative is that you can click on the error icon. So when you click on the arrow icon too, it gives you the option. So you just click import. So you need to import the necessary package. So you just double click it. Okay, so as you can see, once I click on import, it has imported a package, the java.awt.event.action listener. Okay, so the error is still there, so I need to click again. And once it does the import, it gives another error suggestion, which is another import for the window listener. So you click on it, then so you keep on importing the necessary one. Once you get it, another option, it will ask you to add on implemented methods, because the action listeners, you need to add methods to them. So you just click add on implemented method. So when you click on add on implemented method, you can see that a method has been inserted over here. Okay, so this is where you add your code for the action listeners. This is when window is open, when window is being closed, when window is closed, when icon, this is for the icon, this is also for the, so these are for the windows. Okay, then there is still an error, so we click on it. So the next I import item listener. So you import your item listener. Okay, so as you can see, it has been imported, but still the error is there. So you click on still there. So we, okay, now all the errors are gone. Okay, so all the implemented the methods for implementing your listeners, they've all been imported in your code. Okay, so basically that's it. So if you are on this stage, then it means you are a good follower, or a good because programming, you need to be follow steps, because somebody has written the environment for you, so you need to follow that environment to create your own thing. So if you don't follow, you get errors, you get frustrated. Okay, so the first thing says that import your javas.string. So that's what we've imported. Then in your class, after you've created your class, extends JFrame. So you extend the JFrame. Now your buttons will need action listeners. So you need to write implement action listener, comma, item listener, comma, window listener. Okay. So for this week, we only consider the action listener because we have a listener to the buttons which has been clicked. Okay. Then from that one, we come to the item listener and the window listener. Okay. Then we'll do some examples. But for the action listener, each method is in the action perform. So you see this method. That's where we write our code. So that if somebody clicks on the button where we have the action performed, that is its method. Okay. So here, action performed. So that's where between these curly brackets is where we write the code so that if somebody clicks on the button, then we'll show what should happen. So we do maybe some calculation, we display our result. Okay, so basically that's it. So by now you should be able to have this part where you've corrected all your errors. So import java.swing, extends JFrame, then implement action listener, item listener, window listener. Correct all your errors. So when you click on the error, you import the suggested package. And once you imported all the packages, then add unimplemented methods. So once you click them, all the errors will vanish. Then you're on the right path. Okay, so we continue. Now, the GUI. The GUI is designed in the constructor. The graphical user interface is designed in a constructor, so you need to create a constructor for your class. In the previous example, we discussed how to create a constructor. We discussed how to create a constructor already. So you should be able to create a constructor. We say a constructor has the same name as the class. So we write public, then the name of the class. Then if our constructor is going to take in an input, so you write the data type of your input. So you list all the inputs in their data type. If your constructor is going to take in an input, anytime that object of that class is being created, then you do that. Okay. So I'm going to zoom. So you can see clear. Okay. So first, import javas.swing. So I believe you've done that. After your class, extends JFrame. Okay. Now your buttons will need action listener. So implement action listener, comma, item listener, comma, window listener. Okay. Once you've done that, you have errors here. So right click on it, then you select import the method. You'll be given some package. So you just click on it, double click on it, import, then it will import the necessary package. So you click on all the imports. Then you also have add on implemented method. Then you also click on all of them. Then once you've done all of them, all the this thing will vanish. Okay. So once they vanish, then they will add your method for all your action listeners here. So all this one is for window, all the window listener, all the window listener, all the window listeners. Okay, all of them. But this is for the action listener, for the button clicks and the rest. So for now, for this week, we will put our code over here to check what button has been clicked and what should be done. Okay, so basically that's it. Okay, now to create your window, we write them or we design them in our constructor, and I've explained to you what a constructor is. A constructor has a same name as a lesson. So you have public, the same name as your class. So public and the same name. Now if your constructor will take some data, you need to specify the data type of your constructor and their name. So in this window, I'm going to take the title of the window. Okay, the title of the window, then the width of the window, then the height of the window. So my constructor will have string, title, the int width, the int height. Okay, so anytime I create objects of my window class, okay, I need to pass in the title of the window, then the width of that window, then the height of that window. Okay, so now to set the title of your window, you call super. Okay, then the title string over here, the super and the title, whatever string you write here will show on the window. For this ID, you can see that it has written some title at the top. So the title you give to your window, you see it over somewhere here at the top. Okay. So here, the title, we pass it in our constructor of our class. Okay. So if the title is, for example, potential energy calculator, we will pass that string, potential energy calculator. And if you give it a width of maybe 200 and a height of 300, then we specify 200 here and a 300 here. Okay. Now, to give the window a size, we use a method set size. Okay. So the set size takes and the height. Okay. So that's it. So the set size takes the width and the height. Okay. So this will give our window a title, and this will give it a width and a height. Okay. So now when you create objects of this class and you set it to be visible, by default, any object of a window you create is visible. So once you create that object, you need to set it to be visible before it to be visible on the screen. Okay, so for now, we have created a window and we've given it a title. So the text will pass in the constructor will be the title of our window. Then we've given it a size, the width and the height. And so the width will pass in the constructor will be the width of it, and the height will pass in the constructor will be the height of it. Okay. So if you have your public static way made in this one, you can create objects of our class. Okay. But if you have your public static in another class, then in that public static, you create object of that class. Okay. So since I have my public static weight in this class, I'm going to just create the objects of that class. So you know how to create objects. The name of the class. So the name of my class is window. Then you give the object a name. So I can give the small letter with window. It's equal to new. So the new keyword and the same name of your class. Now if your constructor takes in an input, you put the input there. So the first input of my constructor is the title of my window. So here I'm going to call it potential energy calculator. Okay. So after that, it says the width. So I'm going to give the width of 200 and the height of 300. Okay. So by default, the window will not be visible. So to demonstrate that, let me run it for you. When I run it, because I haven't set my frame to be visible, it's not going to show anything on the screen. So you need to set your object window to be visible before you are going to see something on the screen. Okay, so as you can see, you are not seeing anything. Okay, so now let's set it visible. So we write the object name. Our object is window, so we call set visible. Okay, then it takes in true or false. False makes it hide, true makes it visible. So we give it true so that it to be visible. Okay, so we save, then we run again. Okay, so that's our window on the screen. Okay, We have to find the title is Potential Energy Calculator. Okay, so Potential Energy Calculator. Because the width is small, we are not seeing it, but if you drag it and you increase the width a little bit, okay, you can see Potential Energy Calculator. So this is the title you write here. So let me change the title and see. So if I type here coordination, so that will be the title. Okay. Now I'm going to increase the width a little bit. I'm going to give the width of 400 and let's say a height of 500. Okay. So I say I run again. Okay. So as you can see, so coordination, that's the title. Okay. I'm going to change it back to our potential energy calculator. Okay. So as you already should know by now, when you create a class, you need to create objects of that class before we can use it. So that's why in this our window class, we created this object. So to create object of the class, the name of the class, then you give the object a name and equal to the new, then the name of your class. Then if your class has a constructor, you pass in the values of your constructor. In this example, our constructor is title, so we give it a title. It takes the width, so you give the width and take the height. Okay. So in the constructor, super with the text here will show the title. So the title we pass it over here. Then the width and the height we also pass it here. So whatever we put here, the first one is for width, so the width will be over here. And the second one is for the height, so the height will be over here. Okay. So by now, when you run your code, you're supposed to see a window on the screen. So if you've been able to do that, then you're on the right path. If not, then please, I want to patiently take you through this so that you will be able to, because if you are a Java developer and cannot develop a graphical user interface, then you can't use that profession, because in the programming, if you are writing a software, it's a graphical user interface you need to design and use it for your software. This is very, very important. So if you are having issue, if you still run it, cannot see a window on the screen, then I don't know. But so I'm going to go over again. Okay. So it says first import your javas.swing. Okay. Extends JFrame. Okay. This extend JFrame will make it know that it is a window application. Then, because your buttons will have an action listener, they will have clicks to implement action listener. Then, if you have designed a graphical user interface where there will be a drop-down list, you can also include item listener. Then, if you add an item, a window listener, for example, if somebody clicks on the close icon, what should happen? Like giving the person a warning, do you really want to close? And the person click and down the rest. So that one, we use the window listener. So if your application will also have that, then you can have all these things. But today we only have the action listener, but I want to show you these ones as well. That's why I included it. Okay. So now, once you've done that, you get an error. So you click on the error, then you select import, then so the import, it will give you the package to import. You double click on it, then it will import. Then so you do all the import. Then there will be add on implemented method. Then you also click on it. Then once you've done all that, all the errors will go. Then you see some methods in your code. So once you've seen the methods in your code, then it means you are good to go. Now the component of your GUI is done in your constructor of your class. So you create a constructor for the class. A constructor, you write public, then the name of your class will be the same as your constructor. In your constructor, you write the argument, the input your constructor will take when the class is being created. Okay, so you pass in string title, int width,
int height. So this will give the height to the window, the width to the window, and the title to the window. Then to override the title, write super, then the title string. Then to set the size of the window, set size, then the width of your window, then the height of your window. Okay, so this is a class. Before you use a class, you need to create object of the class in your public static void main. Okay, so if your public static void main is in your class, you just create object of it. So window is the name of my class over here. Then you give the object a name. So your object name, I have given it small letter window. Okay, some can call it GUI. However you want to do it, it's up to you. So if I call it GUI, then here, which is my object, then it's supposed to be GUI. So you decide the name you give to your object. Okay, so the name of your class, the object name, then equal to the new and the name of your class. Then you pass the value based on the constructor input. It says it takes a string for the title, so we pass the title, then comma, it takes the width, so we pass the width, then comma, then it takes the height, so we pass the height. Then by default, the window is set to be invisible. So you have to give that object set visible to be true before it can be seen on the screen. Okay, so that's it. So by now, when you run this code, you are supposed to see a window on the screen. Okay, so now we have to add components to our window. We have to add components to our window. Okay, so I'm going to have a paint where I'm going to design or paint my graphical user interface. Then we'll discuss about it. Okay, so I have my paint software. So I'm going to use a pencil to draw how our graphical user interface is going to look like, and the name of the component, Okay, so we'll have our interface like this. Okay, excuse me that it is a little bit curved, but this is a square box. Okay, so now we'll have a label. A label is used to describe your text field. So here we can write mass. So we use a label. Okay, so we can write mass. Okay, so our label we have mass here. Then we have an input box where the user will enter the mass inside. Okay, then after mass we have acceleration due to gravity. Okay, so we use a label for that text. Okay, so you can continue, and that one too, it will have a box. Okay, then we have a label for the height. So we have a height. We have a height over here. Okay, you can continue. That height we also have an input. Okay, then we have two buttons. So these buttons, we have one, we call it car for calculation. So that one will do the calculation. We have calculate. Okay, so it will be a full text. Then we have one for clearing our field if we want to try another one. Okay, so we have another one called clear. Okay, so this is button. So this is button. Okay, and that one, the component name is called J button. Okay, so that one we call it J button. So the class which you need to create the object for that one, we call it J button. Okay, then the field where you user will have to type in the things called JText field. So that class is called JText field. So you need to create an object of that class. Okay, so JText field, and the JText field takes in how many columns you want. It takes in how many columns you want. So in the argument you specify how many columns you want. So column is the cursor, how many of them you want. So if it's 20, you just enter 20 over here. Okay, your J text, so you take the arguments, and the button takes in the text. So that one too, you type in your text that will display on the button in the bracket. Okay, so here the text will be calculate, and here the text will be clear. Okay, for the J button. So and the level, we use J level. So the level, we use J level. Okay, so J level, and that one too, it takes in the text. So for this one, the text is going to be mass. Okay, so that one, it takes in the text. The text is going to be mass. Okay, so these are the classes. So you need to create objects of those classes. You need to create what? Objects of those classes. Okay, now this we use a method called add to add a component to our frame, our J frame. We use a method called add. So when you call the add, okay, so when you call the add method, then you pass in the name of the object name of your component over here. So if I want to add my mass label, so the object name for my mass label, I'll add it. If I want to add my JText code for the mass, I'll write add, then I add. If I want to add my acceleration to reaction level, then I call add, then I add. If I want to add my JText code for the acceleration, I'll call add, then I add, and so on. Okay, but the add component can take only one component at a time. So when you write add this, add that, you realize that it will take the last component because the other ones will override, and the last one will cover the entire window. Okay, so to solve that one, we create a main panel. We create a panel to cover the entire one. Then we add any other component to that panel. Okay, so here the whole of this one will have one panel for it. Okay, so to create a panel, we call it J panel. So we have one J panel over here. Okay, so the J panel will make it possible that we can add many components. Okay, make it possible that we can add many components. If you don't do that and you just be adding, call it your add method, and you just be adding your controls, all these ones are called control, the J level, the J test code, G button, and the rest, they are for control. So if you add them to it, okay, to the main one add, then you add, it will override, and the last one will be the one to solve. So to solve that problem, you create one J panel object, then you add all the other components J panel. Okay, but that one too, so we will do that one, then you see how the interface will be like. Then we can start to correct our interface. Okay, so first we are going to create object for this one. Okay, now like I told you, we add this in our constructor. So when you create your class, you need to create the constructor of your class where you can add the component. Then all these controls or components should be objects. So you create the object. You've done how to create object. The name of your class. So for J panel, that's the name of our class. For J level, that's the name of our class. The J test, so that's the name of our class. J button, that's the name of our class. If you are doing that for password, it's J password field. So for that one, J password field, then you specify how many columns. Your input is going to be your password. Okay, so J panel to cover the entire panel, then you create object for all of them. Okay, now in your action listener, you need to refer to some of these controls. For example, in your action listener, if you want to do the calculation, if somebody clicks on the calculate, you need to get the value over here. Then you need to get a value over here. Okay, then before you do the multiplication to multiply them, before you can get the potential energy and display the result wherever you want to display. Okay, so here we also need a level somewhere here where we display our result, or you can use the dialog. If you want a dialog, you can use it. Other than that, you can have another level over here. So here we have a J level where we display our results inside. Okay, if you decide to do that, so you can have a J level here where you display your results inside it. Okay, so all your controls that have anything to do with the user, whether to get an input from the user or to set a value on the screen, you must all define them as global variable. So you must define them in your class, not in any method or a constructor. You must define them or declare them in your class, not in any method or a constructor, so that they can be accessed in all the methods anytime you want to refer to them. So here, this will be global variable, okay, because we will refer to it when we want to get its value. Then this is going to be global variable because we will refer to it when we want to get its value. Then this is going to be global variable because we will refer to it when we want to get its value. Then this is also going to be global variable because we will add an action listener to it, because we are going to add check if it has been clicked. So we do that in the action perform method. So you need to refer to it as a global variable so that it can be referred in our action perform method to check if it has been clicked. Then add the function to or the code to execute when it has been clicked. This should also be referred to as global variable so that when we can check if it has been clicked, for us to check do the method or the code for it to execute. Then this will also be a global variable because after we've done our calculation, we have to set the result over here in our level over here. Okay, so basically that's it. So this will be in our J panel to take all the components. So all the components we are going to add them to our J panel. Then you see the interface. Later on, we will talk about how you can make it the interface a little bit nicer. Okay, so let's get started. So this global variable, that global variable, that global variable, that global variable, that global variable, this global variable. So all the global variable, we are supposed to declare them on top of the first line of our class. You can't declare them in methods. So this, the constructor is also a method. You can't declare it here. If you declare it here, it will only be available here. If you declare it here, it's going to be only available here. If you declare it here, it's going to be only available here. So it should be outside all the methods so that it can be accessed anywhere in your method. Okay. So we have what? The test code. Okay. I'm going to call it a mass TS. Okay, it's equal to new test code. I'm going to give it the number of columns to be 20. Okay, if it's shorter, then I can increase it. Okay, then which other one do we have? Then the next one is the one for the acceleration. Okay, so I can copy and paste this one, just change the object name. Okay, so here it's going to be ACC acceleration TST. Okay, that one will be 20. Then based on the height, the height to the height. Okay. Then now we're on the buttons. So these buttons are also global. Then this is also global. So the two of our buttons. So J button. Okay. So I'll call it Paart I equal to new J button. Okay. So the button, the descriptive text you pass it there. So this one is calculated. Okay. So I can copy and do that for the clear. Okay, so clear. So the descriptive text is clear. Okay, so that is our global variable. Now let's the result level. So J level, okay, result level, okay, is equal to new J level. Okay. For the result, first it's going to be empty. Okay, so we leave it empty because nothing will be there for the meantime. When we get the value there, when we do the calculation, then we set it value. Okay, so that's it. So all the global variables, we declared them already. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you should have 6 global variables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is for the mass input. We get its value, then we use for the calculation, the same as the acceleration, the same as the height. And the bottom we check if it has been clicked. This we check if it has been clicked. Then the result, after you've done the calculation, we pass in the result. Okay. So now to demonstrate, like I told you, we'll be adding the components in our constructor over here. Now I said the method to add is called add. Okay, so if I call my add and I add my mass tst, it's going to add that component to my window. Okay, so I'm going to run. So I'm already showing my window. So when I run it, to show my window. Okay, so I run this. Okay, so you can see the test code. That's the test code. It has taken the entire way. That's taking the entire. That's taking the entire float. Okay, so it has taken the entire float. So even if I add multiple one, the last input is the one that is going to show. Okay, so for example, if I add, okay, so you can see if I add other level, it will override that one. So let me add the bottom. And you see what I'm talking about. I'm going to add the clear bit, the clear bottom. You see that it will override this one. This one will no longer be there, where it will show the clear if you are using the add. Okay, as you can see, that's cleared the other one. So it's only showing the add button. Okay, so that's why you need to create a panel, a J panel, and you add your component to your panel. The panel can take many components, but your J frame panel, if you just add it, you take the last panel. Okay, so we are going to create a J panel here. We have J panel. I'm going to call it main panel. Okay, because later on, when we want to make our frame a little beautiful or nice, we will also need other panels. So I'm going to call this one main panel. Then we add our component to our panel. Okay, so based on our design, in the order of the design, so the first one that appear in our design, we'll add that one first in the order the way it's flowing. So here we'll create a label, we'll name it whatever it is, then we'll add that component to our panel, J panel, which we've created, followed by that for the mass test code, followed by this level, followed by that in that order. Okay, so we are going to create our level. So J level, okay, mass level is equal to new J level. Okay, the test is mass, so we put the test over there. Okay, then we can add it to our panel. So main panel, so the panel object, so main panel, the object name is panel dot add. Then we add our mass level. Okay. Okay. Now after that, we add our mass test code. So main panel dot add. Okay. now later on we'll add the other one, but we are going to add this one that we already have. So we add the button. Okay. Now once you are done with that, you need to add the main panel to your frame. So that one you just add. Then here our panel is our control that will add to our main frame. Okay. So the add is for the main frame. So this one is for the main frame. Any other component that you want to add, the name of the component, then add. Then you add the component you want to add to it. But the straightforward method add is for the main frame, your J frame, the main one. So our main frame contains the J panel, which is we've given the name main panel. Okay, so we have to add our panel, our main panel to our main frame. So this one add to the main frame. Okay, so now when we run this, then you see that all our components will now be visible. You see that all our components will now be visible. Okay, so as you can see, they are all visible. Okay, so we have our mouse here, we have our text code for the mouse, then we have our clear. Okay, so now that it's understandable, we are going to add all our components step by step. Okay, so after our mouse, so we have our main panel, our mouse level, we add it to it. Then we add our mouse text code. Then the next will be our acceleration level. So J level, acceleration level, okay, is equal to new J level, okay, so acceleration due to gravity, okay, then we can add it to our main panel. So main panel dot add acceleration level, okay, okay. So after that one, we also have that for the test for the acceleration. So main panel dot add acceleration test, okay, and we have that for our height. So J level height level is equal to new J level height, okay, then we'll add it to our main panel. So main panel dot add height level, okay, then we can add our height test. So dot add height test, okay. So in the bottom, the first one that comes is the calculate. We have our calculate test, so our car, then we have our clear, then we can add our main panel, and we can add our results level, results level, and then our result level. Okay. Now we've added all the controls. Okay. So results level. Okay. So now we've added all our controls. So now let's run it and see how it will look like. Okay, so that's it. So our mass and it tells code, our acceleration due to gravity and it tells for our height and it tells for, and the calculate and then the clear. Okay. Then we have our results test, but because there is no test in it, you are not seeing it. But anytime there is a test, for example, if I put in potential energy, okay, so let's assume the value will come here. Okay, if I run this, you will not see the level, the result level test in our, as you can see, the potential in it. Okay. But if it is empty, you will not see it until you put a test there before it becomes visible. Okay, so that is it. So now we've added our component. Okay, so all the components that will be interactive with the user, like display information or getting an input from the user or a button to declare, you declare them global variable over here. So all the controls that will be interactive with the user, global variables. So the ones that will not be interactive with the user, for example, our levels, these levels and these panels, they are not interactive with the user. So we created them over here, like the main panel and all our levels, we created them here. Okay, so now that is the graphical user interface, but we need to beautify it a little bit. So I'm going to explain how to do that. Okay, so now you can see that all these ones are in horizontal. Okay, so now we've called something a layout. How you want to lay out your panel. So like this J panel, how if you want to lay out them, this J panel, if you want to lay out your J panel, you want to lay out your J panel, we call it the list of layouts. So now I'll move to that part of the lecture notes. Okay, so we've done all this part with the correction. Okay. So this is what I did is not part of the slide because normally I prefer to use different example. Then we have that also in the lecture notes so that I can have more examples we can play with. Okay. So for the test, the password is a password for test code, no test code, and the rest. I've done all these things. Okay. I've explained all this. Okay, so we've done something similar to this. So now we are to correct them. Okay, so these are the layouts. So we have the border layout, then we have the grid layout, then we have the cart layout, then we have the box layout, then we have the grid bag layout. Okay, now if you want to design it the way I have written it here like this, okay, and now one you need the grid layout. So in the main panel, you need to specify the grid layout. Okay, so the grid layout takes the rows and the columns component. So this design, it takes in how many rows? The row is the ones that goes horizontally and the column is the one that goes vertically. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 rows and we have 1 column because we divided it into only one. Okay, because all of them are taking the entire width. Okay, so we have 1 column and 8 rows. So if you want to set your main panel with the grid layout, so you are going to specify that it has 8 rows with 1 column for the grid layout. Okay, so using the grid layout. So using the grid layout, so you can see on the main panel dot set layout. So main panel dot set layout, new grid layout. In this example, it is 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in our example, it is 8. Okay. So if I copy this code, I'm going to change it. So here in our main panel, you can set our grid layout. So main panel dot set grid layout. Our example is 8 by 1. Okay. Now we need to import the grid layout. That's why we are getting out. So when you click on it, you suggest that you should import it. Then you just import. Okay. Okay. So we will run it and see how it is. Okay. Okay. How many do we have? How many do we have less than that? Give me a screen. Two level two. Okay. Okay. So I think before it will work, each of them should also be on their own panels. So we need to add a panel to our J because panel takes the entire way. So we need to add a panel to our main panel, then we put the component on the panels. Okay, I think that will be somewhere. This one worked this way, but I think this one, the other version of it that was used. The new one, need to add panels for each of the rows. Okay, so that's what this one is explaining. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, it's 8. 1, 2, 3, I'll do that something. Okay, so let's see. So the new layout is not working. Only the components. Okay. So now let's create a panel for each of them. Then we add the component to the panel. So we'll have for our this one, we'll put it in P1. P1 will be our panel 1. Then we'll add the component to our panel 1. Then we'll add our panel 1 to our main panel. Then P2 we'll add the component to our P2. Then we add P2 to our panel. Then this one will be P3. We'll add this component to our P3. Then we'll add our P3 to our main panel. Then we'll add this one to our P4. Then we'll add our P4 to our main panel. Then we'll add this one to our P5. Then we'll add this component to them, the P5 to them. And P6, we'll add this one to it, and we'll add it to the main panel. Now P7, add this and that to our P7. Then we have our P7 to it. Then our P8, add this one to it, and we add it to it. Okay, so let's do that and see our interface will be better. Okay, so we have J panel P1 equal to new J panel add our mass LB. We want add mass LB, our P panel. Then we add that one to our P1 to our main panel rather. Okay, so we add the level to our panel, then add a panel to our main panel. Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, let's complete this. So we have our P panel P2 equal to new panel, and we add to the so P2 mass SP, then we add our P2 to our main panel, and P3 to new panel, and we add this one to P3, then we add P3 to our main panel. Okay, and this will be for add acceleration test for so for that yes. Okay, you have our panel this okay, so our panel 4, we add our AC test to it, then add panel 4 to this. And that create that of panel 5. Add okay, so our main panel will have a B5 panel. 5. Okay, so create that of B6. Okay, so we add a B6. We add a high EST. Add a B6 to our main panel. Then create that one for both the player and the bottom P7. So J panel P7. Got a new J panel. Okay, then we add our P7. All this one, we'll add them to our P7. P7. Then our main panel, we add P7 to it. Okay, create our we'll add the P7 also to our main panel. Okay, so now we will create our 8th panel, then we put our result level on it. So 8th panel E8 equals to new panel. So we will put our results to P8 dot add our result level. Our result level. Then we'll add our P8 to our main panel. So main panel add P8. Okay, so now when you add the so you created a panel, you added a component to that panel, then you add that panel to your main panel. Okay, so that's how we are doing it, because we want our lesson to take the entire width. So you need to use panel for that. So each of them will be on their own panel. So this one, like we said, will be on its own panel. This will be on its own panel. That will be on the panel. This will be on panel. That will be on the panel. This will be on the panel. And this and that will be on one panel. And this will be on one panel. Then each of the panels, we add them to our main panel. So it's just simple. So our main panel, which is like a frame, we create a panel and we put the control on it. Then we add the panel to our main panel. So we create a panel, we add our control to our panel, then put the panel on the main panel. Okay. So we create a panel, we add a control to that panel, then we add that panel to our main panel. So that's what we've been doing for the entire number of panels. Okay. So each horizontal row is a panel. Okay. So we counted all of them. So we got 8 panels. So as you can see, we created 8 solid panels. And when we add a control to it, we add a panel to our main panel. Okay. Then once we are done, we add our main panel to our panel. Now, in order for each of the panels to be arranged this way, where we have number of rows and number of columns, then we use a grid layout. So we set our main panel this layout. Okay, so this is the number of rows and that's the number of columns. The number of rows is going to the number of panels that we have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels. So we have 8 rows and we have 1 column, because all of this will take 1 column. if I run my code now, I run it, as you can see, so this is our new interface. Okay, so if the width, the height is too much, you can reduce the height as well. So let's see if it's like this. How does it look? So let's see if our height is, let's say 300. Let's see how it's going to look like. So that is it. Okay. So now you can see that by default, all the panels has a layout to be centered. Okay. So if you want it to be at the left hand side, then each of the panel you need to set them to have another layout called flow layout and give it layout of left. Then you can see that they will all be positioned at the left. By default, the flow layouts by this panel have that layout, so by default they are being centered. So if you want them to be at the left too, then you can, each of these panels that we are seeing, you set them to have a flow layout to the left, and they will be aligned at the left. But before we do that, we are now going to do our action listeners. Okay. So now you need to write a code so that if this one is clicked, if this button is clicked, then what should happen? So that code is written in the action performed method. So if you go to the action performed method, you can see that method. That's where we write our code. So if you scroll where this action performed, so between these curly brackets is where we add our method for the button click. Okay, so now this is what you do. So you write a if condition to check which one has been clicked. Okay, so this is called event. Okay, so each event has a source. So to get the source of the listen, we use a method called get source. So the get source will show which button was clicked. Okay, so you have to check. You write an if condition to check which of the buttons have been clicked using the name of the button. That's why I said we need to click them as a global variable so that we can still use their name. So we are going to check if our calculate button has been clicked. So we check if our car, the button there, okay, source is from this button. So we write an if condition in our action perform. So in our action perform, we write if e dot get source, okay, is equal to the name of our button. Okay. Remember, if you haven't declared this global variable, you can't have access to that button. That's why you need to declare them as global variable. Okay. So this one, if get source is equal to this method is equal to car button, it means it has been clicked. Okay. So now, before this will work, you need to add an action listener to your button before it will work. Other than that, it will not work. Okay. So for example, if I want to display a text on the result level, when the time this one is clicked, and I write result level dot set text. To set a text, we use the set text method. Okay. So I'm just going to write calculate button click. Okay. So later on, we'll do the calculation and put the result over here. But this is just for you to see something. Now, if I haven't added action listener to this button, anytime I click, this will never work because I haven't added any action listener to it. So if you are writing an application and you added an action listener in the action perform, and nothing is happening, check if you've added an action listener to that button. So if I run this, and I click on the button, as you can see, you can't see anything. Okay, so now I'm going to add an action listener to the car button. So to add an action listener, it's just the name of the button, then dot add action listener. So wrap car and dot add action listener. Okay. Now in some code, you may write a method for the action listener. Okay. Maybe your action listener may be in another class or something. But if your action listener is in this same class, you qualify it with this. Okay, so with this refers to the action perform code where we have the code that we've written. So that's why it will refer to it and check. Okay, and use that code to, so we add the button dot add action listener. This is being referred to the action perform method. Okay, so once the button is clicked, this code, part of the code will run. So it will check the source of our event. So if the source is equal to the name of our button object, then this will be executed. So we just put the calculate button click test in the result level. Okay, so now let's run this and see. Okay, so as you can see, calculate button click. Okay, so as you can see, now the action listener is working. Okay, so now what we are going to do is that we are going to get the value for our mass, the value for acceleration due to gravity, and the value for our height. Then we'll change them to, remember, all text that you pull from the input fields are all string. So you need to convert them to double before you can do calculations on them. In the previous week, we learned how you can convert a string to a double. Okay, so for double dot pass, then you pass in the string. For integer, it's integer dot pass, then you pass in the string. Okay, so to get the value, of it, you use the name of the test field, then dot get test. So the dot get test retains the test in that test field. Okay, so string my s mass. Okay, my string mass is equal to my mass tst. So that's why I asked you to define them as global. So now we can use that name. So mass.tst get test. Okay, so this returns the test for the mass. And we will have that of the acceleration. So S as acceleration. Down will be for acceleration, so we get a test. And that of the height. Okay, let's go to the height test. Okay, so now if you want to use validation to check if they are not empty, so that if it is empty, you tell the user to enter it, then you can use the if condition to check. And if all the fields have been filled, then you do the calculation and you get the result. So to do that, you can use another if condition. So if, for example, S mass dot is empty, method. If you call the is empty method, if it is empty, it shows it. Okay. And you can use the J panel, J option panel. J option. view option panel. Message. Okay. So view option panel, show message dialog. In the show message dialog, if you want it to be in our appearance window, we can call it this. Okay. Then we can write our message here. So our message is going to be, please enter mask. Okay. Now we can use the else for our acceleration. Our acceleration is empty. Please enter acceleration due to gravity. Else if our height is empty, height is empty, please enter height. Now if all the codes have been filled, then we do the calculation, then we put in that value in our result. So like I said, convert them to double. So double mass is equal to double passive. Then S mass. Okay. Then that of acceleration, double acceleration equal to double S. Okay. And that of our height, double S. Okay. So now potential energy, our double P is equal to mass times our acceleration times height. Okay. So now you can show the results here. So we can write potential energy. Okay. Then we can join our double plus and add J to it. Mean joules for the energy, potential energy. Okay. So now we will run this. Okay. So later on, later on, if you have more skills in programming in the Java environment, you check if the input is a double value. So you write a method to check if it's a double. Because if somebody enters a string and you are doing conversion, you get a syntax error. So first, you also have to check if the value the person has entered is actually a double value, a decimal or integer or something. If the person enters a text, then it's supposed to give an error that the value input must be numerical or something. But this this week is only for the graphical user interface, so I'm not going to write any complicated code. So now we only get the value, then we convert it to double, then we do the calculation to get the results. Okay, so I now run the code. So now if I click, because the mouse is empty to pop up, that should please enter mouse. So if I enter mouse of maybe 20, okay, it will ask me please enter acceleration due to gravity. So if I enter 9.8, it will ask me to enter the height. So if I enter 3 for height, to do the calculation, then to show the result. Okay. So now the clear button is supposed to clear all the fields. Okay. So to clear the field, we use a set test. So the set test will pass an empty string to it, then it will set them to be empty. Okay, so we do the set test. So we need to get the source. We check if the source is a clear button. So we give the clear button a name. So we check if it's that source. If it's that source, then we set all these test fields to be empty. Okay, so that's the next thing we do. So if the get source is equal to this, then the next will be else if. So else if our event.get source, okay, is equal to our clear okay, then the code will be our mass est the set test. We set the test to be empty. Okay, and we do that one for the other inputs. The same with the results, because once you click clear, the result needs to vanish. Okay, so that for the base and that for the result. Here is going to be RC. Here is going to be T. Here is going to be the result level. Okay, so that's basically what the clear does. So the clear will set our test for this one to be empty, that for this empty, that for that empty, and our result level also is set it to be empty. So let's continue. Okay, so let's say 2 selection height is 4. Okay, so if I calculate, I get 80, 40 times 2 is 80, 80 goes. So if I click on clear, okay, I haven't added action listener to my clear button. Okay, so like I was saying, you need to add your action listener to your button before you write the code, and that it will not be listening to that. Okay, so as you can see, they say believing, so it is even good that I even add. Now you can see I'm clicking on it, but nothing is happening because I haven't added the action listener to my clear button. So you need to go into our constructor where we add our action listener to our listener. So you need to also add an action listener to our button. So you can have clear action listener. And that one is going to be this because it's referring to the action performed method in this class. Okay, so we have ones to selection for let's say this into so that's the calculation and the clear set everything out. Okay, so that's basically that. So now we are going to see how you can position these ones to the left. Then that would be it for the graphical user interface. Then we take one more example, which is also not in the slide. So when you follow the slide, then you can also do that of the examples in the lecture content. Okay, I've also have a different examples how we design them. But in the teaching, I want to use different software so that we can have more examples to work on. Okay, so now in the slide, it explains how you can position them to the after you've done all the panels. Okay, so in this example, it's a button. So each of the buttons have their own. You add them to the panel. So you add all of them to the panel. Then so you create a panel. You add a control to it. Then you add a panel to the main panel. Now that then once you are done, you add the main panel to your frame. Okay. Then create the object and set it to be visible. Okay. So now we are on the flow layout. So the flow layout by default it is centered. So if you call flow layout and you give it left, all your layouts is going to be positioned at the left. Okay, so we create a flow layout for each of our panels, then we set them to left. So here this flow layout is given the left position. So we set each of our panels to have that kind of flow layout, so they all be positioned at the left instead of being centered. Okay, so we are going to copy this flow layout. So when you put in the code, the error will come in which you ask us to import its package. So when you have our flow layout, okay, so you see the error. So when I click to it, it suggests I should import. So I just import the flow layout. Okay. So now I can set all my panel, my sub panels. Remember, our main panel have a flow layout of grid layout. By each of the panels we have in our P1 and the rest. If you want them to position at the left, then you also give them set and their layout to that flow layout. So we have our P1, we set a layout to be the flow that we created. Okay, so that will be for that one. Then we do that for the P2, our P2, and also have it. Then our P3, and also set it. Our P4, and also set it. Our P5, and also set it. Our P6, and also set it. And our P7, and also set it. Our P8, also set it. Okay, so now I run the list and then we see if they have all been positioned at the left. So all the controls of the panel, let's see if they've been positioned at the left. Okay, so as you can see, they've now all been positioned at the left. So if you want the code to cover the entire width, then you can increase it. Okay, but if this is not, also decrease the width. You can as well decrease the width of this one. So I'm going to reduce the width of this one to somewhere, it is 400, isn't it? So I'm going to reduce it to somewhere 300. Let's see how it will look like. Okay, so there's space here. So I reduce it to 250 and let's see. Okay, so the 250. Okay, but the window is not showing well. Let's see. Okay, so let's increase the width of this one. So let me do 8 and let's see. Then we'll increase the width of our field, our input field rather, so that the window, the title will also be shown. Okay, this one, so the title that we show, so let's stick to the 300 by 300. So the final is short. So we need to increase the column. So we add 10 to it. Okay. We made it 20, so we make the columns, more columns to 30. So I'll do one around. If it's okay, then I change the rest. Okay. 30. Let's still some small space. So let's say 35. Is too much. So 32. Okay. Yeah, let's say it's 33. Okay, so this is better. So I'm going to give all of them 33. Okay, so that's our final design. So we have mass, this is the acceleration, this is the height, this is the calculate, clear. Okay, so that is it for potential energy calculator. So in the next one, I'm going to do a simple calculator where I will have number one here, then the person enter the value, then I'll add plus, minus, multiplication, and division buttons here. So if the person, then I have number two. So if the person enter this place and enter that place and click on the plus, then there will be addition of the two. Then it will show the result here. The person click on minus, then it will subtract this from this, then to show the result. Multiplication, then that times this, then show the result. That order. Okay. So before I will do that, I'll entreat you to do it. Then if you try it, then you compare your solution to mine, because practice makes perfect. If I'm always doing it, you assume you know. Then if you are given the project to work on, then you find yourself wanting. Okay. So I'm going to draw it in our paint so that I can see what I'm talking about. So you develop it before I will start doing the coding. So you pause the video, you develop it, then once you are done, then you check with mine how I've done it. Okay, but I believe you can do it, and you can do it similar to mine. Okay, okay. So now we are going to do something like this. We have a box here. Okay, so we have right number one. Okay, then you have your food over here. Okay, then you have number two. This is just a simple calculator. Of course, if you want to use that of it, you can also, but that one after doing much practice and having more knowledge in your Java programming, then you can do that project. Okay. But as a teacher, it's not good to bombard your students with so many things when they are not learning. You are okay. So here we have our plus here. Okay, we can have our plus here. So we have a button. We will have plus here. Okay, we have a button. We have minus here. We have a button. We will have multiplication here. We have a button. We have a division here. Okay. So when the person clicks on it, for example, if we have 1 here, okay, we have 5 here. Okay. So if the person clicks, we have a label called equal to, okay. So if the person click on plus, then 6 will be here. Okay. 6 will be here. If the person click on minus, negative 4 will be here. The person clicks on multiplication, we have 5 here. The person click on division, we have 1 divided by 5, then 0.2 or anyway, there will be right here. Okay. So now let's do our panel. So we will create, this will be in our main panel. This will be in our main panel. This will be in our P1. We have P1. Okay. Then this will be a level. Then this will be in our P2. The P panel. New test code. Okay. Then all these add, minus, subtract buttons will be in our P3. Okay. And this will be our P4. This will be in our P5. Okay. And the whole of this will be in our P6. Okay. P6. Okay. Then the entire one will be in our main panel. The entire dimension will be in our main panel. Okay. So we have a panel, main panel, where we put the entire panel. Okay. The main panel, we create this panel, we create this level, we add it to the panel, then we add it to our main panel. We create this panel, we create this latest code control, we add it to our panel, then we add the panel to our main panel. We create each of these buttons, then we add it to our P3 panel, then we add it to our main panel. We create this level, we add it to our P4 panel, then we add it to our main panel. Then we test code, we add it to our P5, we add it to our panel. Then we create this the level, we add it to our panel. Then we add this one also to our panel. We add our species to our main panel. Okay. So now let's see which of them should be declared as global variable. The global variables are the ones which they will be interactive with the user. Whether we get the value from the user clicks on that button, or we show a result to the user, they all be defined as global variable. Okay, so this is going to be global variable. All these 4 are going to be global variable. Then this is going to be global variable. Where we show the results, it's also going to be global variable. Okay, so the rest, they are going to be normal. So we can declare them in our constructor. But for these ones, that one, this one, that one, this and that. Because user will click on these buttons, user will enter a field here, user will enter a field here. We are going to show the result to the user here. We need to declare all of them to be global variable. Okay, because we'll be using them in our action perform method. Okay, so that is the design. So now I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to do it step by step, like we've explained. So once I'm done with that one, then I'll scroll through the content for the part 1 and see if there's something I've left. Then I'll briefly talk about it. Then that will be the end for our part 1 and graphical user interface tutorial. Okay, so So now I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to call it calculator, a new Java project. I'm going to call it calculator. Finish. So remember not to create a model to last week. Don't create. So don't create. That's sometimes if you create, you see error on your project. Okay. So so what is it? Calculator. Okay, is this one. So we create a new class. So class, we click on the SRC, new, then class, new, then class. Okay, so I'm going to call my class and call it calculator. Okay. And I'll write I will create the object in the public static variable in the class, so I can include the public static variable. If you use a different class for the public static variable, you don't need to click on this one. Finish. Okay, so that is our class. Okay, that is our class. So let me see if I can. Okay, so you said first extend jQuery, but you need to import your javas.string.star. So that's the first thing you need to do. So import javas.string.star. So import everything. Okay. Once you've done that, you can extend jFrame. So extend jFrame. Okay. Now you implement action listener. So you can, in this example, I'm going to implement only action listener. So I'm not going to use the window item listener in the window listener. I'm not going to include it, but this one I'm going to only implement action listener because that's the only thing I'll do. And this, so I'm not going to add the listener for the item listener in the rest. Okay. So jFrame implement action listener. Now after this, you get an error. So you click on the suggested error, you click on action listener. So now it's showing the error. This one is not there. It doesn't show the error. It's not showing the error. Anyway. So now if the error comes, you import your action listener. Then the next is to implement add unimplemented method. Okay. Okay. So once you've done that, it goes. Okay. So because I'm not going to have an item listener for a drop down or the window listener, I only included the implement action listener. In the implement action listener, you need, when you click on import, it will import this funds for you. Then you have to click on add unimplemented method. Then it will include the action perform method where we will check which of the buttons has been clicked. Okay, so once you've done this, so this is the first step, followed by sense JFrame, second step, and then we implement our action listener, third step. Then you get errors here, then you correct your error. Okay, once you've corrected your error, I don't know, for some reason when I only added this, it wasn't showing me the suggested error, but when I added the item listener and the rest, it started to show the error. But maybe if you wait a little bit, the suggestion will still come. Okay, so now once you've done that and all the error vanishes, then you need to write a constructor for your class. So we have constructor start with public, then the same name of your class. Okay, then your constructor argument. In this argument, we are taking the title of our window, then the width of our window, then the height of our window. Okay. Okay. Now to override the title, use super. Then the text which is going to be the title, string text we receive from the user. Then you set the size, to set the size of your window, you use set size. So here you pass in your width and your height. Okay. So once you've done this, they should be able to show a window on the screen. Once you've done this, so if you create object of your class, the name of my class is calculator. The object, you can give it a name. I can call it car. It's equal to new, then the name of your class again. And you pass in the argument it takes. So here, my title of my window, I'm going to call it calculator. I'm going to give it a width of 300. Okay, and a height of 300. Okay. Now by default, a window is invisible, so you have to call the object and you set visible to be true. You set visible, set it to be true. Okay. So now when I run this code, it's supposed to show a window on the screen. Where's my old list? So when I run this code, supposed to see a window on the screen, just a window. We haven't added the panel, the controls yet. We haven't added the control, the component yet. Okay, so as you can see, that's the window, calculator window. Okay, so now we are going to add our component. Okay, so you declare all the global variables. Like I explained, the global variables, this, that, and that. Okay, so I'm going to declare all my global variables in the class, not in any method. Okay, not here, not there, but in the class itself. Okay, so first I have my JTest code. Okay, I'll call it num1 tst. Okay, it's equal to new JTest code. I'll give it somewhere, let's say 25 for now. If it's too much, I'll reduce it. Okay, then we'll have that for our second test code. Okay, then we'll have our buttons, the J button. I'll call the add one add bnt. It's equal to new J button. So that one, the first is just going to be class. So I'll copy for the other ones. Then subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, so this one, I'll call it subtract bnt. So let's say sub. So that one is going to be minus. Then this is going to be multiply, so what? We use the x multiplication. Then we have what? Divide, so b. And that one slash. Your key has a division key, fine, but I don't have the division key, so I'm just going to use the slash for division. Okay, so now which other global variable will we need? Results. Okay, the one to display the results. That one, J level results. New J level initially going to be empty. Get the result, put the value there. Okay, so that's it. So we have how many global? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 global variables. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it's set. So now we go to our constructor. Okay, and we add a component. We create and add the component. Okay, now how many rows do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows in one column. So our main panel, we are going to set grid layout to be 6 rows, 1 column. Okay, so we create our main panel. A panel, main panel, because new A panel, and the main panel set layout. Okay, going to new grid layout, which is going to take 6 rows, 1 column. Okay, get the error, so we import the grid layout. Import grid layout. Okay, so that's it. So now we go step by step. So the levels, we create level first component. So we create that level, we create the panel, we create the level, we add it to the panel, then we add it to the panel to our main panel. So we go step by step. So we create panel, so J panel E1, report to new J panel. Okay. Then we have our J level. Okay. On 1 level. That's new J level. Okay. Copy. 1. Okay. So we add number 1 to our panel 1, then 1 level, we add it to our panel. Okay. Then we add our panel to our main panel. So this is our main panel. We set the grid layout to be 6 rows, 1 column. Then each of the panels, we create a panel to create the panel and the control. We add the control to that panel and add that panel to our main panel. Okay, so that's what we are doing. Okay. So when we run this code, we are going to get a strange figure because we specify this one to be 6 rows. So until all the rows are completed, our interface will not be that. So let's run this and let's see how it goes. So this is nothing because we haven't added our main panel to our frame. So we have to write add the main panel. Okay. We add our main panel to our frame. So we run again. Okay. So that's it. So we have our number one. We added to our first panel. So our second panel is going to be our field for taking the number one value. Okay. Now you can see it is centered, so you can create a flow layout and set that panel to have that flow layout. Okay. So we saw how to write the flow layout in the code that we copied. The flow layout. Okay. You can get it from the Windows side. Flow layout, then give it an object. It's equal to new flow layout. Then that one is going to be flow layout dot left. Okay. I'm going to copy this one. If I want all my panel to be positioned on the left, so I will assign them to this flow layout. By default, the flow layout is centered. Okay. So by default, it is centered. So all my P's will have. So anytime I create a panel, I'll set that flow. Okay. So now if I run again, you see that my number one will be positioned at the left. Now let me run again. Okay, so as you can see, it's positioned over here. Okay, so now we do the other flow. So the next flow, so we have to add it to. So we write our P2, we create a new panel P2. So the panel P2 equal to new panel. Okay, we set the layout flow. Okay, then we add our number one test flow to PST. Okay, then we add it to our main panel. So main panel, add okay. Now I run it. So like I explained to you, the concept is simple. The second P2 contains our num1 test. Okay, so we create the second panel, then we set the layout to be left, so that it position on the left. Then we add that control to it, which is a num1 test to it. Then we add that one to our mainframe. Okay, so here we add our mainframe to we add our main panel to our mainframe. Okay, so now when we run this, you are going to see the level number one and the test code the 25 seems too much, so I'm going to do 23. Okay, so we've done this one, we have done that one. We are left. Okay, so our bottom will create our P3 panel for that. Okay, so we have our connect P3 equal to the panel. Okay, and P3 we are going to set it out. Okay, then we'll add all our buttons for it. So P3 dot add. We add our add. Add our start add our mod, add our division, okay, then we add our P3 to our main, so main panel, add P3 to it. Okay, so now when we run, so our third panel, we add our button that we created. They are global variables, so all the buttons that we created, we added them to it. Okay, so now when we run it, okay, so as you can see, our third panel has our buttons. Okay, so later on we'll add a click list. So when you click, it gets the first number and the second number, then it does the multiplication and put the value there or addition or whatever it is. Okay, so we are left with our fourth panel. It contains our second level. Okay, so we create our fourth panel. This panel P4 equal to new panel. Okay, so we set our layout to the flow, that is position at the left, the controls or components position at the left. Then the level, that one, what's the number 2 level, what's the new level, right? You write in capital. Okay, so this one also in capital. Okay, then we add this cover. So number 2 level, we should add 2 level. Okay, then we add that one. Add that one to our main panel. So main panel, add equal. Okay, so when you save and run, okay, so that's it. That's our number 2. So now we are going to create our fifth panel, which will contain our text code. for num2. Okay, so create a P5, create panel P5, start a new view panel, set it to, then we already have our panel, so we just add it to our panel. So then add num2 yes, and we add the new panel, add a P5 to it. Save, I run again so you see what is happening. Okay, so we've done this one. So we are left with the results. The result where it's going to show over here. Okay, we are left with the result. Okay, so the results will be on the panel. So we create a new panel, new panel 6, D6. Okay, start a new panel. Okay, reset full layout. So we position the left. So the first one will be equal to, so this one is local, so equal to, so we create a J level equal to, so we have J level equal new J level. Yes, it's going to be equal to. Okay. So in case you want a space to be left next to the other one, so equal to, then we add it to our P6. So P6 dot add equal level equal level. Okay, so you added that one. Then we add our pieces to our main. Later on, I'll come and add the result also to the P6, since the result is also going to be on the P6. But I just want to run this first and see it. Okay, so that's the equal to. So we are going to add our results here. Okay, so I'm going to join it. So for P6 dot add results level. Okay, so it has added the result level. So later on, when we do the calculation and we display the result, it will be in that result space. Okay, so now that is it. So now we have to add action listeners to our button so that we check if they has been clicked. Okay, so in the constructor, as I've explained, any part in the constructor, we can write it here or wherever it is. So for each of the buttons, we can add ent dot add action listener. we are going to use this method, the action performed in this class. So I can copy that for the other parent. I change the so I have as this mod the and leave the action. So now we've added the action listener, all of them, for all of them. Okay. Now we'll go to the action perform. You go to the action perform and go and check which of the buttons have been clicked, then you add the action listeners to it. Okay. So we add action listener to this, we add action listener to that button, we add action listener to that button, we add action listener to that button. Okay. So now we'll go to the action perform. Like I told you, this is where we check which of the buttons have been clicked, then we add our code. So we use the if condition. So if our event variable, which is ye.get source. So if my source is equal to add ent. Okay, so if it is this button, so like I've explained to you and I'm explaining again, because we will need to this variable name in the action perform. That's why we declare it as global, so that it can be accessed in this method as well. So if our get event source is add button, what do? We get the number, so you can call it string. I told you all float values are string values, so first to be string. So string s num1 okay is equal to num1 tst dot get test. Okay. So the test flow for num1, that's the name. Okay, so that's the name. And the second one is num2. So we call it string s num2. Okay. Dot the second test flow. Okay. So here we get the float which the user has entered and the rest of the second one. Okay. Now if you want to validate the float, we can write our condition. So if s num1 that is empty, you give the message. The option come that show message dialog. Okay. So the parent is this one. And our message is going to please enter first number. Please enter first number. Okay. So else, like it is not empty, then else if our second our second string is empty, we should please enter second number. Okay. So now else, which means if else if our code is code. Okay. So like I explained to you, all inputs are strings. So before you do any calculation on them, you need to convert them to double. Okay. So we can have double. I can call the first one num1 is equal to double dot passive double. So s num1. Okay. So this converts our first number, and this second one converts our second number. Okay. So we can have double, sorry, the double should be small d. and our result. So double result. This is addition. So our result is going to be num1 plus num2. Okay. Now we are going to set our results. The result level dot set test. Okay. So it's going to be our result that we've calculated value. Okay. Because this one takes a string, but that one is a double value. So it's either we put string here and we put plus here. Okay, so that it will join the double variable with the string, so they all become string. Okay, so that's it. The result will be over here. Or in some cases, sometimes it's possible to convert your double to string. So let me see if there is two string inside. Okay, so no, doesn't have to string. Okay. Okay, so you just join. So you have your double, then you just join it that way. Okay. So empty string with the results. It will put it over there. So now I run my code. I'll put two values there. I'll click on the plus. Remember, the action listener code is only for the plus. Okay. So I can write 5 here. I can write 2 here. Okay. So now when I click on the plus, you can see that it has added the two numbers and the result over here. Okay, so now if I change this one to 5 and I click on it, it's 10. Okay, so now we do that for the rest. Okay, so we can just change the code. We can copy this one, then we modify for the subtract and the other ones. So else if our get source is sub, the one for the subtraction. Okay, so it's just this place that is going to change. So you subtract. Okay, then if that for our multiplication, so if our test sources that for the multiplication, so here mod bmt mod. Okay, so here is just multiplication, and you know the multiplication operator star. Okay, then it will show the result. Okay, and finally division. So if it's big, the big button. Okay, so it's just a slash. Okay, okay. So now I run, and now we add the code for each of the buttons. Okay, so if you click the field is empty, it will tell you. So we have 6, so the second field is empty, so let's say 2. Okay, now we say 8. So the subtraction give us 4, multiplication give us 12, and division give us 3. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so you can have another button called clear. Okay, if you want. So the clear will clear the field and the results. Okay, so then if you want to clear everything and do again, so I'm going to. So now we are done with the calculator. I'm going to add a clear button so that when you click on clear, all these fields, so this, that, and that will disappear. Okay, so I'm going to add a new button. So since I will need it in the action perform, I need to do it as a global variable. So this is clear, and the text is clear. Okay. some calculator they write C over there. So if you want to make it C or clear, okay. So now I have to add that one to my P3. So I'll add my clear over here. Remember the order you add and where to join the component. So this will come after the division button. That's why I added after the division button. And I can add my action listener to it. Okay. So clear everything. Okay. And I add the action performed. So when the button is clicked. So else if the button is clicked, so else if the button is clearly okay, we set our num1 test, so num1 tst dot set test is going to be empty. Okay. So that of our num2 is going to be empty. And our result level test is also going to be empty. So set test. Okay. So we clear it. Okay. So now let's run it. Okay, so this is a new button we've added, and we check if the source is from that button. Then this will set them to empty string or the field where we want to clear them. Okay, so when I add, now when I run, okay, now you can see the clear button. Okay, so now we have graph 10 here, can have 34.7. So addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, division, then clear. Okay. Okay. So basically that's it. Okay. So that's it. So I believe yours was also similar to what I've done. So this is P1. So you create a panel 1, you create this panel, you add it to it. You create panel 2, you join this one to it. You create panel 3, you join all these ones to it. You create panel 4, you add this level to it. You create panel 5, you add this JTest to it. Then panel 6, you add this one and the result one, that the one that comes here to it. Okay. Then you make them all of them to be full layout to the left. Okay. P8. Okay, so P5 full layout. P6 also full layout. Okay. P5. Okay, so I haven't added full layout for P5. So that's not centered. Okay. Okay, so that's it. So we'll go over the slide, and that will be the end for this week part 1 tutorial on the graphical user interface. Okay, so now everything has been positioned on the left, so they are in line. Okay, so that is it, that is it, that is it. Okay, so in the console application, we did a number of applications. We wrote a number of applications. So you write a graphical user interface for those applications that we wrote in the previous lectures. Okay, so we saw something like like the loan calculator, where we have the principal times the rate to get the interest and the rest. Okay,
We also have, I think we were in there when we were doing the if condition, we also saw the grading system also. So you can design a graphical interface for the grading system as well. Then in the other lectures, so there are other applications that we wrote. So you can go through them, then you can write applications for them. This time you use graphical interface. This time we were using enter this, then that. Then I think there was one with the this one is potential energy. I think there was one with kinetic energy. So in the kinetic energy, we have the velocity and the mass. So when the person enters the mass and the velocity, then we do the calculation, then we show that on it. Then I think you can do that for work done and the force and so on. Okay. So basically it's the more you do, the more you know. So try to design something, especially the calculations one, so that at least if you can have the application for the science lab, so students can do the calculation, then they can verify with VS to check if their calculated result is correct. Okay. So I will scroll through the course content and see if there is something I'm missing, then we'll briefly talk about it. Okay. So I start from the top, see if there is something I've missed from my lesson. So I think we've talked about almost everything. So first import, extend JFrame, implement the action listeners, then correct the error. Once you've corrected the error, declare global variables for those that will be interactive with the user. Then you create a constructor where you set the title, you set the size of your window, then you create components, you create a panel. The J-frame takes only one panel. So if you just add the panel to the J-frame, the last component will be shown. Okay. So it's better to create a panel, one main panel, and add that main panel to your J-frame. Then in that panel, you can add your controls to it. Okay. Now, in order to position them well, each of the controls, you also put them in a panel, which will take the entire horizontal space. So you create a panel, you add a control to the panel, then you add that panel to the main panel. So you do that for all the rules, okay? And the main panel, you give it a grid layout to be the number of rows and one column, so that it takes the entire space. Each panel takes the entire space, okay? If you are writing an application where you divide the section you have two sections, then you can make them two columns. So one will be over here and the other one will be over there. Okay. So based on what you are doing, and you do the calculate how many columns you need and how many rows you need, then you use the grid layout. Okay. So basically that's it. Then you add each of the components to the panel. Then you add a panel component to the panel, then the panel to the main panel, and also the action listeners to those buttons that will be clicked. Okay, so the name of the control dot add action listener. Then you add this because you'll be referring to this one. And the action listener code is written in the action performed code. So this is where you write your code. So in this, you write your argument for the handling your listeners. Okay, so basically that's it. So this one you position them well with the panel logic. Okay, so that's basically that. So that's basically that. Okay. So in more, it's use the login. So with the login, this field is supposed to be the password. So this password field, since it's a password field. Okay. So once the field was designed, then the action listener was implemented. Okay, so implementing action listeners. So you check the source. Okay, so the name
of the button will be here. So the argument this was the old version of Eclipse. That one uses ARG then O. And the new one uses the E for the event. So if it's E, then E dot get source. Then you check the name of the button. So if that one has been clicked, then you put your code. What should happen? Then remember all fields taken from the user are string. So you need to convert them to double if you are going to do some calculation on them. If you want to check if it's empty, the string is empty, the string you get from the user is empty, use the is empty. Okay, so if it's empty, use the D option palm to show the error message. Okay, so you do that one. If you want to know all the error message, then you implement your listen here, your code over here. So this go even further with the calculator. Okay, so in this example, it creates another window so that if your login is successful, then that window will be shown. Okay, in this example, so it uses a two-dimensional array for the password and the username and check. So if the username and the password match, then it shows the calculate button. In this calculator, we have the hours, we have the hourly rates, we have the cash rate, and we have the calculate in the clear. Okay, so you follow, you try, you also do this one also. All the examples I have in the material, you follow them. That's why I did something different and I also have something different on the material so that you can try both, then you can get at this. In my example, I have two different GUI. In these examples too, there are two different GUI. They are login in the calculator. Okay. And also when in the more example two, there was also a different one which calculates the force, which calculates the force of a body. Okay, in more example, it calculates, so it takes the mass in acceleration due to gravity and calculate the force and display it over here. So that one too, you can design it before you check your code. So the design is simple. First, import your javas.string. 2. Extend the frame. 3. Implement action listener. When you write the implement action listener, you get error. So you correct all the error by clicking on the red error icon, then you choose import, then you click on it to import the necessary package. Then you also the next option can be also add unimplemented method. Then you click on it. So you do that to correct all your messages. Okay, all your errors. Okay, now the GUI is designed in the constructor. So you create a constructor. Now in the constructor, we said a constructor has the same name as a class. So public, then the name of your class. Then the constructor, it takes in an argument. And in my example, it takes in the title of my window and the width of the window and the height of the window. So you pass it. Then to set the title of your window, you use the super, then the title. And to set the dimension of your window, you use the set size. So in the set size, you pass in the width and the height variable. Then to set the size of your window. Then all your controls, you add them in your constructor. Okay. The interface that will be interactive with the user, you declare them as global variable because we'll be needing their name in the action perform method to check if there has been click or not, or get a value from the inputs or set a text in the level. Okay, so all those ones you need to declare them as global variable. Okay, so once you've done that, you check if a button has been clicked in the action perform. You use the if it's the event name is E, it's going to be get source. Then you compare it with the two equal to then the name of the button. Then your curly bracket, you write the action which the code to perform that task when that button is clicked and so on. Okay, so I believe with my example and the example I have in this lecture note, you'll be okay and you'll be able to design a simple graphical user interface. Like I advise you, all the examples we've done in the previous one where we're using a console, design a graphical user interface for them. Practice makes man perfect. Programming is about practice. you get error, you correct, you learn. You get error, you correct. If you use 30 minutes and you are getting error and you give up, then that's it. Then you are not committed to the course, okay, or your profession. Okay, so you do more. Then if you have an error, you look for assistance, or you can Google to correct the error, or even chat is there. You can post your error so that you will be assisted, so that you can learn more. Okay, so please buy time for your coding. Okay, and remember, subscribe to our channel, and also chat is supported by voluntary donation. So you can also donate so that the lecturers who prepare the materials for you will be able to do that willingly and enjoy the what they are doing. Okay, so this is a long video. It's almost 2 hours and some minutes, but this is part one. So part two, we will do the graphical design interface for the menus and the drop down list and the rest. Okay, but until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.